Okay, so here's the story of how Glacier's Edge came to be. So in 2001 or so, my dad, I grew up in Lyons, Kansas, and so my mother had some wisteria vines behind their house that was growing on their pergola that was not flowering, and she just said, if they're not going to flower, we're not going to have them here. And so Dad said, fine, I want to put some grapevines back here. And so he put some grapevines up, and four years later or so, he had his first harvest. But the grapes were so far away from the ground that they were ripening individually. And this was a Concord grapevine, and so around here they don't have the growing season that they need to anyway. So those grapes were ripening individually, and he'd get up there on a step ladder and he'd pull those grapes off one by one and stick them in a Ziploc bag, and then put them in the freezer. Well, pretty soon the freezer was full of grapes. My mother said, "You're going to make grapes, or you're going to make wine out of this, or I'm going to make jelly, but one way or another, by the end of the weekend, this freezer's not going to have any grapes in it." So he said, "Fine, I'll make some wine." So his first attempt at making wine. He thought that it was the best stuff ever, thought that he was Robert Mondavi, and he said, "Mike, you got to go have some of this. You got to have some." And I said, "Fine, I'm really excited, Dad." And he just thought that it was the best stuff ever, and I had to tell him otherwise. So he said, "Fine." Wasn't very happy with my assessment. And he said, "You think it's so easy? You go put some vines in." Now, we have 107 acres here, and there was just trees and brush and stuff out here at that point in time. And so I said, "Fine, I'll show you." He has 2. I put in 125 that next fall, or the next spring. And the year after that, we put in another 500. And the year after that, we put in another 500. And he'd just chuckle every time we'd talk on the phone. "I cannot believe you're putting in all those grapevines. What do you think you're going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to have me a commercial vineyard." And he just thought that was great. So in 2009, in August of 2009, we had our first commercial harvest. And it was a hot middle of the August afternoon that we took the grapes that we harvested down to a winery just south of Kansas City. And he just loved it. They crushed them and they pressed them right in front of us, and he just thought that was the coolest thing ever. That next weekend at 62, he had a heart attack and died. And so the next spring, we put in another 2,000 vines. And at that point in time, we thought, well, what are we going to do with all these grapes? So we started kicking around the possibility of doing a winery.